Our final presenter of the day is a master chef. Having trained with the myriad of Michelin star chefs around the country, he built a reputation as the classically trained chef entrepreneur who is one of just 67 certified master chefs in the U.S. Not one to rest on his laurels, he is a whirlwind of culinary energy, overseeing restaurant openings, launching restaurant produce farms, designing and opening restaurants, and even a casino, opening his own culinary collective and lab, launching online courses and training, and providing catering and event services. Not your average chef's repertoire, he's blazed a culinary trail across the country. Please help me welcome Certified Master Chef Rich Rosendale.
Everybody, I hope that you are all having a great time with the International Sous Vide Association. I want to thank the organization for inviting me back again to present. And hats off to you for being able to do this under the conditions. I mean, I know doing it virtually is different for everybody, but of course, it's a great organization and there's a lot of great speakers. So I'm Chef Rich Rosendale. You may remember me from last year. I did the keynote and also a presentation as well. And I'm back again this year. And I wanted to talk about a different topic, which is going to relate to sous vide. I'm going to give you a little bit of background first, but what we're going to be doing is talking about sous vide and sustainability as far as ways to increase yield, trying to limit your footprint and impact on the environment. And believe it or not, there is a lot of ways to do that with sous vide. I know a lot of times they start thinking about plastic bags and it's like, no, it's too much waste and, so on and so forth. But listen, if you educate yourself and you think about the process and you're using new products and items and techniques that are out there, then there's always ways to improve upon the process and while keeping sustainability front of mind as well. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm gonna do a little bit of a screen share here with you, just so you can see some of the screen. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is we have company-wide, and also that we have available that we are distributing is some new types of vacuum bags that we're using. And these are from Henkelman, one of our sous vide partners. And these are the CombiVac Pure Vacuum Bag. And this is one way, if you think about like with all the bags that people use in their operations, people that cook sous vide, I mean, think about a great big hotel, being able to say to your customer that, hey, these bags are 100% recyclable. We have all the specs on this particular bag. It creates a beautiful, clean seal. And the fact that we can go and tell our guests that it's recyclable is relevant to them. I know there's some other products that are out there, like reusable ones and things like that. Of course, there are some sanitation concerns when you look at some of those products out there. However, if you're in a controlled environment, maybe you're in your own home kitchen, those may be an option. But for us, we thought, hey, let's first try to focus on the bags that we are using and try to source out a recyclable product. And that's really exciting that we have these available from Henkelman. That's the CombiVac Pure Vacuum Bag. Another one is just simply being able to use a thinner density bag. This is another product that we've been working with them on. This is the CombiVac Preserve Vacuum Bag. And this uses 13% less plastic than the regular traditional vacuum bags. We have, again, excuse me, all the specs on that bag is on our website. But I wanted to give you like a couple of like quick examples of like what we're using in our operations. And again, always continuing to look and assess the different types of products that are out there with vacuum bags. So that's one way that you can make a bigger impact from a sustainability standpoint with sous vide. Another one is I'm going to give you like a little case study. And before I do that, I also wanted to note that one of the things that made me kind of focus on this is the fact that I was noticing every Friday, whenever I would usually leave for the weekend, I'm looking and I'm like, man, look at all these water bottles that we are just like throwing away. I mean, there's like, maybe somebody would come in for a tasting or, the team members, people are drinking water and somebody, takes half a drink, leaves the thing there. So we were having like a lot of water bottles, a lot of plastic that we were throwing away every week. So we made the investment with the Nordac water filtration system, and now we were able to upgrade our water presentation for our team members and for our guests by giving them an option of sparkling or still. And it's a nice enhanced presentation in a glass vessel as opposed to the plastic. And we're using a lot less plastic. So I point that out because when you look at this number here, 13% less plastic, it might not seem like much, but 13% is 13%. I mean, over the course of the year, if that bag will get the job done and you're going to be able to have less plastic used, even what it takes to make those bags, it adds up. I mean, just think about if the entire industry embraced those kinds of principles, what kind of an impact. The next one, we're going to do a little bit of a case study here. And this is talking about our new all-natural beef tallow soap. So let me give you a little story. So over the course of the winter, you know, we're doing new products and we're working with new clients. And we got a new client that was a really we were really excited about. They were a large airline, and we were doing a lot of smoked brisket for them. And one of the challenges is during our first order, as many of you know that buy meat over the last several months, the prices went through the roof. I mean, literally brisket was like twice as expensive. And for any of you that cook brisket, you'll know that you don't really get a large yield out of every brisket that you get in. If you get a packer cut brisket that has, you know, it has the point and the flat, and then you have the fat and the decal. It's just a lot of trim that you have to do. And then of course, after you cook it, then you're going to have a lot of shrinkage. So you may end up with maybe 40 to 45% of 1,000 pounds of meat that you can actually sell. So we started asking questions about, well, what are we going to do? Do we have to increase the price per pound? Or in the restaurant, do we have to increase the price of a sandwich? And instead, we asked a different question. We said, hey, can we sell the fat? So this is how we arrived at this new product. And circling this back to Sous Vide is we actually made this, the first step was basically taking all that fat, putting it into the cook chill bags, and using the overnight shift to render out that fat at a low temperature. And basically what we were left with is a beautiful, refined, like crystal clear, nice, well, actually golden colored beef tallow. And beneath the beef tallow was another layer of very collagen rich, almost like a concentrate of stock. So we actually got two products out of that. We've got the beef tallow itself, and then we also got, after that beef tallow was rendered, we also got this gloss of very gelatin rich, heavily, very rich reduction essentially of all of the beef particulates, the stock that was in there came out, and we actually used that in our chili, and we backed out of some of the other more expensive ingredients that we were putting into that chili. And what it helped with is it helped give the chili more viscosity, and it kind of bumped up the beef flavor. But now we took literally, you have, 2,000 pounds of meat that comes in, and 1,000 pounds of it we basically weren't using before. And now we've turned that into soap. And now for any of you that are curious as to the process, we actually take this tallow, after we've separated the tallow from that very collagen-rich, gelatin-rich beef gloss, we take that and we will mix the tallow with lye, and the lye will create a reaction that will actually make it non-greasy and very lathery, as you would expect with a soap. And then we added a little bit of charcoal powder, and then we also added some castor oil, which has a lot of great properties for your skin. And then we also added a little bit of peppermint for the aroma. And another thing that was interesting is also in that process, we found that some of the trim that came off of the bars of soap after these bars that were formed, and I'll go back to show you the actual finished product here. We actually have been taking a lot of the trim that comes off of this, and we're always testing things in the lab, and we have experiments going all the time. And John, our pit master, actually started using the trim that came off of this, and he's been kind of mixing it in and even cleaning, deck brushing some of the docks and cleaning the floors with it. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's the abrasive or the charcoal wanting to pull up a lot of those particulates from the floor, particularly grease, but it really cleaned the floors rather exceptionally well. So, we're still using chemicals and everything from Ecolab, but again, just really peeling back the orange a little bit and kind of just asking questions. Are there ways that we can be more aware of what we're throwing away, and are there ways to utilize products that otherwise was going into the trash? Also with Sous Vide, I did want to also point out that we actually did on our podcast. If you go to, I'll show it a little bit later, but if you go to our podcast channel, it's at richrosendale.com under podcast. We actually had a great guest that was on recently. His name was Christopher Galarza, and he is a sustainability consultant. And one of the things that I think that sous vide lends itself very well to is actually, as I mentioned to you before, how we were kind of using that overnight shift to be able to cook product, render product, cook tallow sous vide to be able to render it out. But whenever you're using the sous vide technique, very often you're using electricity, almost always. And one of the things that you are definitely going to see more of is the electrification of kitchens. And anytime that you ever kind of look to what's happening out west, California, a lot of times, a lot of those trends, and even globally, a lot of times you'll see a lot of these trends develop, and they eventually will make their way around or across the country. And an example of that is that I believe there's over 20 counties that have banned gas hookups in California. And you're really seeing a big push toward the electrification of commercial kitchens. And we actually also use a lot of induction and also using a lot of combi ovens. This is really something that you're going to see a lot more of. But again, as I wanted to kind of connect the dots with sous vide and sustainability, I just wanted to give you an example that even the type of energy, now we're not going to get super deep into the conversation about that, as I know it can be controversial as to the origins of electricity. But again, we're not going to solve all the problems in just one or two activities. This is basically just trying to be mindful of when you're cooking sous vide and anything that you do in your kitchen. Can you accommodate sustainability into the conversation? So we just showed you that recent example of our little case study that we did. Another one that I'm going to show you that I think is really super interesting. This is one of our recipes that we're working on for the USDA, a new USDA recipe. And all of our recipes, whenever we're testing things out, we do everything using our software here, our Comey software. And I wanted to do one with our 48-hour short ribs. And I wanted to give you an example of how you can increase yield of a protein. And we're using braised short ribs, or essentially sous vide short ribs, as kind of our little case study. Even though we always have a lot of new products that are always coming out, people may look at it and think that you just, you cook something and you say, hey, this is going to be, $43 for this, or this is $75 for this. Part of it is what the market will bear, but also you have to go through a yield test, and you have to really determine when you consider your energy usage and the cost of ingredients, your operation, labor, all of these variables, that have continued to creep up over the past year, you really have to think about how can you do something that you're going to be able to bring value to your customer and also keep the integrity of the product. So I feel like we've done something that we've actually improved the quality of the product. We're able to give more value to the customer, and we have less waste. So let's use these short ribs as the example. So the first thing we did with our short ribs here is we went ahead and we always kind of create our formula of what our desire is of what we're trying to do. So the first thing we did in the butchering is we actually took 2 plate short ribs, which are bone-in short ribs, and we've taken all the sinew off. We've taken all of the fat off. Again, that has gotten used for our beef tallow. And then what we did is we make our stock with our bones, but we take those 2 plate short ribs and we use TG, transglutamate, that is also known as meat glue. And we fused these 2 plates together because very often when you take these plate short ribs off, they are very thick on one side and they taper off and get very thin on the other. So what we've done is we've overlapped both of those short ribs, fused them together so that you have essentially now a rectangle of short rib that is very consistent with the thickness. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, any of you that have cooked sous vide and you are doing your ribs, anything that you're cooking, you know that there's a lot of liquid in the bag that very often, some people use that, but very often it goes into the trash. People end up not using it. So we said to ourselves, like, hey, how can we take that and now add basically a short rib that comes with a sauce in it and have less waste? So over here, you see Walter is working on adding some of the, creating our formula. We're using some xanthan gum. We also work with Ingredion, which basically they are experts with the various types of starches that are out there. And we would know the properties of all these different starches because some freeze very well. Some are very good at absorbing fat. Some are very good with liquid. And then in this case, we're able to make this recipe gluten-free by taking out some of your traditional roux and things like that out of the recipe. But basically, we took our jus and then we made a very concentrated jus. We added a little bit of xanthan, and then we also added some soy lecithin to kind of help with the emulsification of some of that fat. And here you see your rib. You can see where these 2 ribs, one back here, and here's the other one, and you can see how they're fused together. And then what I did is I said, okay, for a customer, we're going to want to give everybody about a nice 3-pound package of rib that will come with the sauce. And you can see one thing I checked here is to make sure that the seam of where these 2 layers of ribs overlapping, making sure that you have a nice clean seam. And we did with this. This came out really nice. But I'll tell you, if we had not gone through this process of fusing both of these pieces together, you would end up with a less yield, less attractive, not as nice of a presentation in the finished product. Because it would be very, very thin on one side. And short ribs, as you know, are very expensive. And again, a little close up, and you can see right here where that seam is from doing that fuse. And, I know TG over the years has gotten a little bit of a bad name because people are, they're gluing tenderloin trim together. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, for me, I always want to be an expert in all of the different properties of ingredients that are out there. And when I know those different properties, I can then troubleshoot when I go through a recipe and I want a particular result that I know what I'm going to get because I understand the properties and what those yield. And if something turns out differently than what I anticipate, I know exactly what to do to go back to correct something. Then we're seasoning these ribs just generously with salt and pepper on both sides. And then we do give, a lot of people will kind of ask this question about, to sear or not to sear. When we're doing many of our meats, we do sear or grill the outside of the product. And we do that for two reasons. One is we want to accelerate the Maillard reaction to give it really nice caramelization prior to going into the vacuum bag. Because when it cooks, all of, when you think about it, all of any herbs that you put in there, any herbs or spices, those oils are all water soluble. And as it cooks, you're going to be more likely for that caramelization, that nice char, that grill flavor to permeate down into the meat. And also, by the way, it also adds a pasteurization step in that marking on the outside. So now, then what we did is we did two different tests here. We have test number trial 1 and 2, and the difference is one of these had tomato paste added to it. If anybody is interested in the recipe or any of the processes, we will make this available. But we actually are. This is still a recipe that we're still working through, and we've had great results. I'm literally showing you behind the scenes from the RC Culinary Lab some of our product testing and how we do things. So this is one that this was the one that actually had a little bit of tomato paste in it, whereas this one had just traditional jus, and there's a little bit of fat still coming out. So we are going to add a fat emulsifier, and we're actually going to back off a little bit on the Ultratex, and we may even use a different starch in here. But the point is that this is also looking at it after it's cooked, and we have two different versions here. But this really made a beautiful sauce after it was cooked. And of course, we'll go back and we'll look at our yield test and everything. Let me go here and see. So I can give you an example here. This is just pouring the ribs out, and you can see the viscosity of what's coming out. Now, some of you may say, hey, I see a couple little globules of fat that are in there, or I think that's too thick or too thin. Great, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to tell you, I sliced this and it was outstanding. Actually, bag number 1, which was the straight, our beef jus concentrate that we made, which is almost kind of like making a beef stock, only it is a fortified beef stock. So it's almost like reducing a beef stock the way you would make a traditional jus. And then we added our modified starch to thicken it. And then we add an emulsifier, something like soy lecithin that can kind of help with the emulsification of some of that fat. And then whatever juice comes off is going to kind of dilute some of the sauce so that you get right about what you're looking at for the consistency. And this is the second one, just to give you so that we can kind of compare test number 2 and test number 3. And you see that one's a little bit thicker. But I will tell you, compared to this, ate extraordinarily well. I mean, it really stuck on the meat really nicely. And we'll obviously do this for parties, but this is one of the ones that we're doing testing for with USDA. So that is pretty much concludes my presentation. If anybody has any questions afterwards, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the International Sous Vide Association. There's many of you that I'm sure that are in attendance that know how to reach out to me. I'm on social media at richrosendale.com. We also do cooking classes. We have a sous vide one coming up here in like another month or two. But we've always been big advocates of sous vide. We've used it. It's made our life better. I use it at home. And I'm really happy to be able to share some of the things that we're up to, that we're working on. And I think that with sustainability, we all need to really kind of look at our operations or our day-to-day and say, hey, what's my role in this process? And just because we're putting things in vacuum bags doesn't mean that we can't be part of that initiative to just do things better. It just requires that you analyze every aspect of what you do and how you do it, and always try to be better in the future. So Thank you all for having me, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you so much.
I think it's such an important message, just because we have an amount of waste and we have, issues like that doesn't mean we have to just accept it. We can continue moving forward and seeing what we can do to get better and better. And I love his sauce just at the end of it. That was a question earlier, what do you put in the bag to make a good sauce? Thank you, Rich Rosendale, for answering those questions for us.
I just love the way he thinks, man. That was just all of it, from using the tallow and soap, and it was just really a neat, very unique presentation.